The Seattle Kraken rookies hit the ice to officially open 2025 training camp.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey to the hey, Seattle hockey fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, also an accredited media member for the Milano Cortina Olympics, where we will, of course, be covering anyone with ties to the Seattle Kraken. I will also be covering the women's tournament, which means that we have some PWHL Seattle players we're expecting to compete, especially for the United States and Canada there. Excited to bring you that content throughout the year. I'm also the founder of Black Rosie Media, where we empower Black women, melanated creators in sports media. We create original content around your Seattle Storm, who we know will be taking on the Phoenix Mercury, who will be taking on the Las Vegas Aces once again in the first round of the WNBA playoffs. You can follow Black Rosie Media on all social media platforms for more there. This episode of the Locked On Kraken podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today was the opening day of rookie camp. It was also the first day for public pre-sale on the new Seattle Kraken jerseys. I will say the one thing that I did not equate when ranking the new Seattle Kraken jersey is that it is a Fanatics jersey. Like, intuitively, I knew that. Fanatics, of course, has the contract now. I know there's been a lot of conversation about the quality of Fanatics jerseys. Even, they moved to MLB and some of the MLB jerseys on the actual players. So definitely one of those that I want to hear from y'all. And I will be reading some comments that our YouTube viewers have left regarding some of the topics for today. Speaking of, we're going to hear from Jugnauth and Catton today. They spoke at first day of rookie camp. Lots of conversation about building up body mass, how they spent their time ahead of rookie camp, and the fact that they really want to be successful in camp and show that they are NHL level, NHL caliber. So we'll hear from them shortly. Then we're going to go into where are they now, inaugural season part 2. We have some players like Riley Sheehan that we're going to talk about. Some players, again, we've talked about in our other series, which was where are they now, the expansion draft roster. So obviously a lot of overlap, but other players, again, either came through in free agency. Wenberg is one of those players. Sheehan, we're going to talk about, we talked about Joey Decord. We get to talk about Philip Grubauer in the inaugural season. So, definitely going to have some fun with that series. It'll be part 2 of the Where Are They Now inaugural season. And then, as I mentioned, I'll get to some comments that were left on our YouTube channel in particular, because y'all are cooking in the comments and I love it. I knew that having Maddie B over Shane Wright in that Athletic article we talked about the other day was definitely going to wake some folks up. But let's get into today's episode. Again, we knew coming in to this season that a lot of eyes on Berkeley Cadden. He's in the same situation that Shane Wright was with regard to his age. And if he doesn't make the NHL roster, then we will not see him in the AHL this year. And he knows that. Obviously, the organization knows that. And so I'm very curious and eager to see how he's able to compete comparative really to the other Seattle Kraken players, because that's effectively right now who he's competing against for a roster spot. And he focused a lot, both of the players that we heard from today have focused on being able to maneuver with older, faster, stronger players. And they talked about their approach. Let's hear from Berkeley first.
Yeah, well, I mean, last year with the draft and all this stuff, it's a really short summer. It goes by quick, and there's not as much time to, I think, just kind of settle down and work on getting a little stronger, a little bigger. So I think, this past summer I spent lots of time doing that and working on little aspects of my game and, feeling really confident. I think coming into this September, it's just about, putting my best foot forward and showcasing myself the best I can.
Biggest jump this summer?
Yeah, I think just obviously the strength side, but it kind of ties into, winning stick battles and stuff like that. And I think this summer I was skating with lots of NHL guys, so it's a different kind of breed going into the corner with, an older guy versus a guy in the Western League. So I think just learning how to, use my body properly and the strength I have gotten, how to, use that in the corners and stuff like that and come out with the puck.
Who are some of the NHL guys you skated with?
There was Connor Zary, Braden Schneider, then, lots of guys, me, Braden Yeager, Kevin Korchinski, we're all trying to, play full year in the NHL. That's kind of our goal. So lots of like-minded, people, and it was great.
What were you able to add?
Yeah, so I feel like I've never really just gained 5 pounds in a month or anything. It's more like putting on a pound here and there. So I'm about 180 now, just under. So I think when I came here, I was 172 or 173, just a year and a bit. So I'm putting on weight steadily, and I think it's kind of just comes with getting older too. It's easier to put on weight and feeling stronger, day by day.
How comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a long process. Not just going to happen overnight, but seeing that and just being in this environment, it's been my dream since day one. So seeing those guys out there, inspires me a lot and just pushes me to want. Yeah, lots of time I have stuff I want to work on, but I also just kind of love being on the ice. It's what I enjoy doing. So if I can stay on a little extra longer, I always will. It's kind of the way I've always been. Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so that's Berkeley Catton talking about putting on weight. He talked about skating with some NHL caliber guys or guys trying to really make the NHL. What I loved is that he equated putting on body mass, right, and getting his weight up, not just to doing it to be bigger for no reason. He talked about how it has a direct correlation with what he's trying to do with regard to winning stick battles and quote stuff like that. And being tough on the puck, winning 50-50 battles, being net front is something that we know the Seattle Kraken have struggled with in the first 4 seasons, whether that's consistency, not having enough guys to be able to do that. So Berkeley Catton realizing and being able to practically take his weight gain and make sure that it is in service to those things, I think is huge. And it might sound simplistic, but those are the things sometimes that can make the difference when it comes to coaches trying to fill a roster, because we need some sandpaper. You know how I feel about my sandpaper. We need some. But, he's not the only guy that we were able to hear from. We also heard from Tyson Jugnauth, the defenseman. And here's what he had to say about coming into day one of the rookie portion of training camp.
It was good. It was a little long here in Seattle, but I mean, it was good.
You can't beat Seattle.
No, exactly. It was great. I think I'm just going to go out there and play my game. Obviously, a lot of great players here, and I'm excited to get going in September. But I think for me, it's going to be important to play the way I can and, just go there every shift and with the mindset of not trying to do too much and, just showing what I can do. Portland was huge for me, I think, confidence-wise, and just, playing more. Obviously, in Wisconsin, I didn't go, as I expected, as I wanted. And I think going to Portland, working with Corey Murphy a lot, it helped me a ton, just getting the reps I need to, make the jump to pro and, hopefully do well. I think I knew that I needed to get my body in a place where, I could absorb the game, and the best way for me to do that was to stay in Seattle. And obviously Nate and Jake are great at what they do. They've been unbelievable all summer, and I think now I'm ready. I feel good on the ice, and I think it'll be a big step for me. I mean, it's always kind of been like a weak spot for me. I've never been like the strongest or the biggest guy, so I think once I signed my entry-level contract and realized I was going pro, it was kind of like I got 3 months to do this, and I got to be ready. So it kind of came down to where I had to do it. Actually, yeah. The last couple of weeks, me, Burke, and Razor have been doing a ton. We went to the Sounders game, which was awesome when Messi was here. We went to UW football game. We got field passes for the Seahawks. So pretty much went to every sporting event around here. So it's been, no, not really pressure. I think me and Burke talked about it quite a bit. It almost feels like just another day here because we've already been here for so long. It doesn't really feel like rookie camp, so there's no really pressure just going out there and playing and then, letting things happen the way they happen.
So that was Tyson. I loved that he said his approach is to lean into his game. He also revealed some of the NHL guys from the Seattle Kraken that were in and out of camp or in the area that they were able to unofficially work out with. We talked about this before on the show. Everydayers, that, and just NHL fans, that although this is the start of the rookie portion of training camp, a lot of the guys, some of the elder statesmen, if you will, he mentioned, of course, our captain, Jordan Eberle, said Philip Grubauer was there, Jamie Alexiak, as some people that had showed up as the guys were working out. And so that's huge. It's huge for any continuity that we want to see if and when, hopefully when, these young guys are able to cut their teeth in the NHL. But also, of course, the immediate impact and effect is you can hop into training camp. It's a pretty short training camp comparative to other leagues, perhaps, mostly the NFL, I think. But, I'm very eager to see how this team develops and how we start to understand the elements of culture, the kind of direction that this team wants going into season 5. All right, everyone, coming up, we're going to, go a little retro, not reverse retro, but we're going to go retro and talk about where are they now, our second installment of Where Are They Now, the inaugural roster for the Seattle Kraken. And then we will close out with some of your comments that I've been reading over the last few episodes that I've posted on YouTube and just reacting and responding to some of those comments. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. This episode of Locked On Kraken, as I mentioned at the top of the show, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We know the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that $5 bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets. Bonus bets that you can use all throughout the platform, on the app, on the website, including maybe you want to check out the player props or build a same-game parlay, or even just jump in as the live action unfolds. You can do all of that on FanDuel. We talk a lot about the futures bets on Locked On Kraken, and it makes everything more exciting, especially for those who are keeping an eye on your fantasy roster. Quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Seattle hockey is basically here. That's right. Training camp, the rookie portion of training camp opened up. We heard from Tyson. We heard from Berkeley, Catton. On today's episode, they hit the ice, of course, with the rest of the rookie camp. We broke that roster down a little earlier, a few days ago, I guess, back end of last week. And it's going to be a crucial one. I feel like I say this after every training camp, and I think it's been true. The Seattle Kraken, though, I think still need to have a super strong development system, and I'm trying to see what the game plan is going to be. But I will be around the rookie showcase. There's one, of course, in Everett at Angel of the Winds Arena, and then there's another one at Kraken Community Iceplex on Sunday. I will be there for that one. So if you see me, come say hi. Please tell me your name or your handle if you comment a lot on some of our platforms like TikTok, YouTube, etc. I've already heard from some of y'all that you plan to come say hi at KCI. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good time. We're going to step away from rookie camp just for a minute, or the rookie portion of training camp just for a minute, to go back to our Where Are They Now series, just a little reflection on the Seattle Kraken. This is something fun that we can do. Season 5 seems like the right time in our history to reflect, and we've had some great guys that have come through the organization that I want to be able to talk about. All right, so I want to continue on this. Where are they now? We talked about players with 10 games or fewer. That included in the inaugural season, players like Joey Daccord. Matty Beniers was the last player that we talked about. Derek Pouliot, Austin Czarnik, Dennis Cholowski, Alex Boré-Boulet. Really so wild to kind of reflect back. Who are some of your Kraken players that you remember, or honestly didn't remember and needed a refresher on from that first season? But we're going to continue on here. Nathan Bastian, someone that we talked about in our expansion draft series, the right winger that we picked up from the New Jersey Devils, still, trying to make it happen, is listed on the Dallas as part of the Dallas Stars organization. He played 12 games in that inaugural season, and someone who I think was one of the first players that I talked about, thinking about talking with Trey Matthews, and who's our host of Locked On Devils, and he was claimed off of waivers by New Jersey, waived by the Seattle Kraken on November 25th of 2021. So didn't spend a lot of time with the Seattle Kraken. Moving on, Victor Rosk, a centerman, went through a lot of centermen in the inaugural season, which is, interesting, but also makes sense given how the Kraken have built out their roster since. But Victor Rosk, he was traded to Seattle from Minnesota for future considerations on March 21st, 2022. And he was then signed as a free agent by Dallas July 4th of 2023. Victor Rosk, another centerman here. And if we look at his time with the Seattle Kraken, 18 games played, he had 4 goals, 4 assists, and a -3, 1433 time on ice, 28 shots. So Swedish player here, left shot, was drafted 42nd overall in the 2011 draft. That's the second round, a 12th pick overall. So Rosk, also someone that was featured on that Seattle Kraken inaugural roster. We keep it moving and we go to Cole Lind. Cole Lind, someone that we got to pick up in the expansion draft from the Vancouver Canucks. He, in 21-22, only played 23 games, 2 goals, 6 assists, a -1, 12 penalty minutes, and time on ice 1150 for the Seattle Kraken. He would feature in the next season, but very short-lived. Of his 24 games for the organization, 23 were featured in the 2021 season. Now is listed as part of the Texas hockey organization, which of course includes the Dallas Stars. And so that's where Cole Lind is. If we move on, other players on this list here for us, Carson Coleman. Carson Coleman now is playing overseas. He joined the Seattle Kraken after being with the Boston Bruins organization. He spent some time post Seattle Kraken in the AHL, and again now is playing overseas. If we look at Carson Coleman, part of the Islanders organization as listed right now. He signed as a free agent with the New York Islanders in July of 2023. The Seattle Kraken claimed him off of waivers from Boston in January of 2022. I do remember Carson Coleman had a little bit of sandpaper in the 21-22 season. He played 25 games for the Seattle Kraken, 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points overall, -2. He had 13-10 time on ice per game. He would feature with the Seattle Kraken in 22-23 as well, before moving on to the Winnipeg Jets, and now, as I mentioned, the New York Islanders. But Carson Coleman, a right shot, a centerman from Minnesota. And just, another player that I remember vaguely, but having some sandpaper. And that's definitely what the Kraken needed in that inaugural season. We talked about him when we talked about the expansion draft, but Chris Driedger also featured as part of this Seattle Kraken, of course, inaugural roster. He has had such a seesaw career when it comes to his time with the Seattle Kraken. And honestly, since the Seattle Kraken, he was picked up in the expansion draft from the Florida Panthers. So as part of that expansion draft, we talked about him there, but I wanted to lean into more what he was able to do in the 21-22 season, because the next season, 22-23, of his 29 games, 29 games with the Seattle Kraken organization at the NHL level, because, we can talk about AHL with him as well. But 27 of his 29 games completely have come in season one. He obviously got injured at World Championships, so that minimized what he was able to do in that second season. And then it was a fight between him and Joey Daccord, really. Some might say Philip Grubauer, but I think at the time, Joey Daccord to make the NHL roster, and we know where that landed. But going back to the 21-22 season, 27 games played, 24 of those were starts, 9 wins, 14 losses. He had a .296 goals against average and an .899 save percentage. Time on ice was 1478. 1,478 minutes and 24 seconds to be exact. So didn't ever really work out with Driegs. Philip Grubauer definitely picked up most of the games for the Seattle Kraken that had to do with injury and illness. And again, it was a mixed bag of things, honestly, with Chris Drieger. I remember commenting on YouTube that honestly, I don't even remember. It was so long ago, it feels like so much happened with Driegs that it was sometimes hard to remember like exactly when he was, how long, when he was hurt for how long, etc. But again, just never really panned out for the guy. And he had a tough time really finding an NHL gig after the Seattle Kraken. If we move on here, we also have someone that we've talked about before, the Fleury brothers, Cale and Hayden. So Cale Fleury, we still have Cale Fleury as a part of the organization, has spent a lot of time though in the AHL. But if we look back to Cale Fleury in the 21-22 season, 9 games played there, a -3, 1434 time on ice. Cale Fleury, one of those guys that we picked up in the expansion draft, got him from the Montreal Canadiens, and, has not been able to be a real fixture in the organization, and sometimes it bees like that. But another Fleury that we also picked up in the expansion draft was Hayden. And if we look back to Hayden Fleury, again, picked up from the Anaheim Ducks, 2021-22 season, we saw him for 36 games, 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points, 13 penalty minutes, 17 was his time on ice per game. Cale would end up going to Tampa Bay after the 21-22 season, and then he signed as a free agent with the Winnipeg Jets last year, ahead of the 24-25 season. Moving on, other Kraken that we saw in this inaugural season, just a few more that I want to talk about before we wrap, because I'm definitely going to lean into Ryan Donato for tomorrow's episode. But other players, and we talked about some of them, Calle Jarnkrok, your boy, Mason Appleton, Jeremy Lauzon, and Mark Giordano, all of those players taken in the expansion draft. If we look at how they were able to feature with regard to the Seattle Kraken in the inaugural season, start with Calle Jarnkrok, someone who, great guy. I think that another centerman that we were trying to make work here, again, so many centermen in the inaugural season, came over from Nashville, played 49 games for the Seattle Kraken in his first and only season with the team, 12 goals, 14 assists, was a -15, 1648 time on ice. Calle Yarncroke, after the Seattle Kraken, was traded to Calgary for a second-round pick in the 2022 NHL draft, a third-round pick in the 23 draft, and a seventh-round pick in the 24 draft. Went to Calgary after that, spent time with Calgary in the 21-22 season before signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs as a free agent in 2022. So let's just talk about those picks. So when we look at offloading Calle Yarncroke, we got some picks from Calgary, which ultimately included David Goyette in the third round of 2023 and Jakob Fibiger in the seventh round of 2024. I believe that's correct. Or was it 22 for David Goyette? How the years blend together. It was 2022, so excuse me. David Goyette, second round, 61st pick overall in 2022. So Calle Yarncroke, again, still in the league, but with the Maple Leafs these days. We talked about Mason Appleton. We picked him up also in the expansion draft. He came from the Winnipeg Jets, still in the league, with the Detroit Red Wings. When we look at what Mason Appleton was able to do for the Seattle Kraken in that inaugural season, he played for the Seattle Kraken 49 games in the 21-22 season, 6 goals, 11 assists for 17 points. He was a -4, 14-18 time on ice overall. He was traded to the Winnipeg Jets for a fourth-round pick in the 2023 NHL draft. And if we look at that draft pick, so Mason Appleton, he was traded to Winnipeg, now with Detroit. Last players that we're going to talk about here, because I want to lean into Ryan Donato and some other guys that we know and love from the Seattle Kraken in the upcoming series here, Jeremy Lauzon and Mark Giordano. We'll start with Lauzon here, someone that we picked up from the Nashville Predators, and was a lot of fun to talk to Ann Kimmel over at Locked On Preds over the years about Jeremy Lauzon. We got Jeremy Lauzon from the Boston Bruins. He then went to the Nashville Predators. He was traded to Nashville for a second-round pick in the 2022 NHL draft. So you can see that some of these guys that were on the roster in the inaugural season, they became some of the picks that would turn into things that the Seattle Kraken would then use to up their pipeline. The pick that the Seattle Kraken used or received for Jeremy Lauzon, they used to pick up someone by the name of Yanni Newman, who I am very eager to see how he competes in this upcoming training camp. And then, of course, there was the captain, Mark Giordano. We have talked about him before, our first ever captain, and, a guy who helped be the cornerstone of the organization, just recently retired and is going to be working with the Toronto Maple Leafs. We talked about that. But for the Mark Giordano portion of the trade, Colin Blackwell was also a part of that trade. So we'll talk about Colin and Mark together. The Seattle Kraken picked up a 2022 second-round pick, and they used it to pick up Nico Koko. They also got a 2023 second-round pick, Lukas Dragicevic, who we talked about the other day as maybe a sneaky pick to keep an eye on in training camp. And then they also picked up Kim Saarinen here, the Seattle Kraken, with the 2024 third-round pick. So, again, a lot of these guys, their trade value was elemental in the Seattle Kraken being able to up their pipeline. Now we're in a situation where some of these pipeline guys we're hoping will be hits. And Newman stands out as one for sure. I mean, we talked about Goyette. I think that's another player that we can maybe see sooner than some of the others. Coco got a little taste of the NHL last year, given everything that was happening with goaltending. So I think we're going to see that again. The Seattle Kraken at the trade deadline in particular, likely going to be active, and some of the fixtures that we will talk about in our next Where Are They Now inaugural season style, they are likely going to be the players that once again get a big return. Now, how long is this process? What is the timeline? Where does perennial playoff team, quote, as soon as possible fall into play? The answer is we just don't know, but hold on to your hats, your UMA hats, if you will. That's right. Got to dust off the UMA hat coming up here shortly. But, we're just going to have to wait and see how this all plays out. Coming up, I want to go to some of your comments, and then we'll get you ready for day 2 of the rookie portion of training camp. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. And if you're anything like me, tracking your finances sometimes feels like an overwhelming task. Most people can't name their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, don't even talk about credit lines and etc. When you don't have a full picture, though, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why Monarch Money is a huge asset. I've been using Monarch Money for a few months now, and it's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. You can use this if you're working with a life partner, and you can put all of your accounts on one Monarch Money dashboard. You can also use it, as I do with my business, to track things. You can identify where you are saving money, where you're not saving money. I love to look at the cash flow when it comes to my business, so I can then make proper predictions and projections for what I want to do, how I can spend that money. And you can also maximize your investments through the tools available through Monarch Money. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, Seattle hockey fans, we went through some more Where Are They Nows. I stopped just short of Ryan Donato. And yeah, the next episode is probably going to be heavy on Ryan Donato content, because most of the other folks that have played more than, I think it's about 50 games. And that's because, for the guys that played more games specifically in the inaugural season, they also went on to stay with the Kraken at least for another half season, if not longer. Some of them are still on the roster, and we'll break all of that down in our next installment. But right now, I want to come to some of your questions or comments. And I talked about the common threads, and choosing between common thread designs is like choosing your favorite child. Oh, man, I will leave that to the parents to decide. As the eldest of 3 children, I'll just say I do think favorites is a thing. I will also say, for any young people watching, I do think favorites can change at times, which is interesting. But they're all so good. I couldn't agree more. Striatic. And, I love the common thread. I just love what the Seattle Kraken is doing there. It's very exciting, very dope. I want to go back to something that George C. Kraken said in our Vets versus New Threats, where we also talked about top players under 23 and some of the bold predictions. George is saying, Joey as Vezina finalist, I hope so. Wild card berth, absolutely not. Aggressive sellers at the deadline is more likely. We just talked about being aggressive sellers at the deadline in the inaugural season and some of the returns. I think you're probably right, George. I honestly felt a little swept up in the moment, and I was like, you know what? I'm leaning into, as sometimes we hear people say, toxic positivity. I had that one toxic positivity episode, and it felt so unnatural. I was like, oh, we can't do that. But I definitely leaned into toxic positivity with that one. And George says, my boy Shane will lead the team in scoring. And he's not the only one. Jenna also chiming in, I'm more excited and optimistic about Shaner than Maddie. I'd say Shaner Berkeley than Maddie. Also hate the Stevenson contract and don't want to see him in Shaner's rightful position of 2C. Man, that's great. A lot of people have commented about the Chandler Stevenson deal, even when the Chandler Stevenson deal was a thing. I hate the Stevenson situation, Jenna continues, less than most people, and I still wish to God we hadn't done that. I'm a huge Hayden fan, John Hayden, and sincerely think this team performs better with him in the lineup. I wish he had Cart's spot, as in Ty Cartier. I have to think about what my prediction and ideal lineup would look like. I'm with you there, Jenna, and I'm an eye test gal, which is why I cannot wait to touch down on Saturday. I will be around the team and the beat on Sunday, but it should be an exciting time. I will be around the team and with the Kraken beat on Sunday, so stay tuned for that. And, finally, I want to come to a comment about Oscar Fisker-Molgaard. So from our episode talking about the next sniper and prospects to watch, when we talked about Oscar Fisker-Molgaard, we had one comment that Fisker-Molgaard will definitely be part of Denmark's Olympic team. I personally can't wait to cover him if and when, probably when, he gets to Milan for the men's ice hockey tournament. Played a huge part for Denmark in the recent World Cup and picked up a decent amount of points for them. And he says, Juan says that Oscar is extremely underrated, very good defensively, doesn't think he's quite at the Beniers level, but not too far away. And I know a lot of people trying to decide whether Shane versus Berkeley versus Maddie might be our best player, quote unquote, player/prospect under the age of 23. You know where I stand. Year of Beniers. I still think that Beniers adds some continuity, some solid things that the other two have a lot of promise and maybe even will surpass him. But right now it's definitely Maddie B for me. So to hear that Oscar could be like a Maddie Beniers, I think that's really interesting. And so, playing with, whether it's for Team Denmark or playing in Sweden playing in the SHL, how is that going to impact his maturity on the ice? I am certainly ready to see. Juan also goes on to say that Oscar, Newman, and Catton are probably the most NHL safe prospects that we have right now, although he does feel that Oscar will need maybe another year or two before he can really cut his teeth and be a solid and true NHLer. As always, if you have any comments, please do respond, whether we're talking about jerseys. I know that Joe Dabney, who is contributing, had to step away for a few days for some things that the family is handling, but has been commenting also with respect to the jersey in particular on our YouTube comments. So please do engage with us. If you're not already, subscribe, comment. It helps us grow the show. We want to be able to grow our content. And sometimes we have additional content that we will be sharing, especially when Joe and I are both in Seattle, on Black Rosie Media. Follow us on TikTok. You can follow Black Rosie Media also on YouTube, and make sure you're connecting with us. A great way to see some additional content, especially if you like content about women in sports or women's sports overall. A reminder for you to be kind to yourself. Please, please, please be kind to one another. And let's see what this rookie class can do at the start of training camp. They have a showcase coming up in Everett and then another one at KCI. I will be at the latter and I can't wait to meet you. Please do come say hi, introduce yourself, tell me what you like about the show and what you hope to see for the Kraken this upcoming year. A reminder that we hold fast, we stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. I'm sure some of you are also saying, let's go Seattle Storm. They will officially be taking on the Las Vegas Aces again in round 1. And either way, I will catch you on the next episode of Locked On Kraken. Until then, peace out, everybody.